All right, guys, welcome back to the PogMads channel. It's Maddie here, and it's Tuesday. What we're gonna do today in today's video is update our tier list from last week. So last Tuesday, we did our initial meta deck tier list, sort of a predictive tier list of the season, but things have changed so much with the metagame in Pokemon Pocket and the viable decks and what's happening. Also, ranked releases, I believe, tomorrow. So I wanted to get this tier list out and sort of reevaluate where these decks are and what they're doing, I guess, in the current metagame, because, again, after this past weekend, things have changed very dramatically. So I have the tier list up on the screen. This is, the decks are all in the tiers as they were when we built this last week. So what we're going to do this week on the tier list is going to be a little bit different. We're going to, instead of, I don't have time to like edit this video fully, so we're going to do everything like all in one take, no editing. And if you guys do want to see versions of the deck list, I'm just going to kind of go over here to Limitless and then pull up a recent example. And that's how we're going to do it. So I apologize for the lack of editing, but we're going to go ahead and do the tier list this way. Before we do that, though, you got to go register for PMPT number 23. It is this weekend. If you go to tournaments here on the Limitless, play.limitless.com, and you go to upcoming, and we can filter even here by Pokemon Pocket, and you sort on down to, where is it, March 14th, we have PMPT number 23, the PALDEAN party. $200 in the cash prize pool this week. It's going to be a lot of fun. We will be back on the live stream this weekend, although I will be gone on vacation, but we got the team handling it, so no worries. Okay. Anyway, let's get into the video. Link to register down in the description below. So let's go into Pokemon Pocket and we'll go to decks. This is the cumulative sort of metagame data right now that we're going to be using to rank these decks. And honestly, we're just going to go a little bit quicker in today's video, and I'm just going to move the decks in their tiers if I think that they should be moved, right? So that's what we're going to do in no particular order. We have two new decks on the tier list. We do have Ninetales Baxcalibur. This is something that popped up somewhat recently last week. And then, of course, we have the Mega Lopunny Annihilate deck. These are decks that people just weren't playing when we made our tier list last week, but they are seeing some play now. So we'll add them to the tier list, and let's get right into it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, by the way, guys. We're almost at 50,000 subscribers. Okay. First and foremost is going to be Magnezone and Bellibolt, which we had in the S tier, and I think that's definitely appropriate. If we take a look this season, it's the third most played deck, but it is on the rise, 9% meta share, 53, almost a 54% win rate. It did very well at the tournament this past weekend, including winning. It has winning matchups, honestly, into I'll pull up an example here. We can filter by date, I think. Like, we'll just pull up like one of the most recent lists. This stack list did very well at the tournament. I think it got first place, the 1-1 Bellibolt, the 2-2-2 Magnezone lineup, and then 1 Oricorio. You can slot a lot of stuff in here. We've talked about it a bunch of times. This, to me, is the #1 deck right now because it actually has really good matchups into most of the other top decks right now. It is struggling a little bit into Hydreigon, and it can struggle into some of the Altaria Gourgiest lists, but at the end of the day, this is definitely still an S tier placement. I think that this is the #1 deck currently right now, and I think that a lot would have to change for the metagame for this deck to really be knocked off the podium. It just has a little bit of everything. I think the 1 Oricorio goes a long way, and so does the 1 Bellibolt. We're going to keep this S tier. Next up is Suicune Baxcalibur, and this is definitely something I wanted to talk about because on Friday, we talked about how this deck was struggling a lot. It is still the most played deck across this entire season so far, but it isn't seeing nearly as much play, recently as it did about a week ago. It's sitting right now as the most played deck, but it has a sub 50% win rate, and that is declining quite rapidly. It loses to, all of these lightning type decks, and it's been struggling a little bit into the Chingling Altaria decks as well. So this is just not something that I feel very strongly about. I'll pull up one example of this deck just recently. I think it actually won a tournament today or yesterday, and it's, again, not a bad deck list whatsoever. I think that this is a deck that honestly is just not very well positioned. I think that the metagame was sort of formulated around this deck because so many people played it early on the season, and it still sort of drove the metagame. The outcome of the current season is very much dependent on this deck list, so I think it's still incredibly strong. It's a bit of a gatekeeper deck, so it's still beating a lot of the top decks right now, but since it's not well positioned against, I believe, the other top decks in the metagame right now, specifically the lightning type decks, I think Suicune Baxcalibur is going to get demoted. We're going to put it down here into the A tier, which I think is a fine placement for it. Honestly, if it continues to struggle, if the metagame kind of stays how it is right now, then maybe it even falls closer down to B tier. But I'm thinking like a mid-low A tier placement for this deck list. We'll put it like right here. We'll just remember the ones that we've already done, I guess. And next up is going to be Altaria and Greninja, which is also one of the more interesting developments, I would say, because recently, this is a deck that actually has also started to struggle. This is a deck that does not do well into Oricorio because we're not playing water energies. We can't utilize Greninja very effectively, right? So let's take a look at a recent deck list here. If this is any players watching this video in particular for pulling up your deck, then shout out to you. But yeah, I think a lot of decks here are honestly, they're forced to play one Middle Evolution, one Rare Candy to get around opposing Chinglings because predominantly, I would say the big struggles with this deck in the current metagame right now are not only the Oricorio Lightning type decks, but also Dark Greninja, which we'll talk about as probably the biggest sort of meta development in the second week of the season. Dark Greninja really does beat this matchup as well as Oricorio and Magnezone. So this is a deck that's been struggling. Honestly, it beats Hydreigon, beats Suicune Baxcalibur, but it just really can't do enough right now. It's still sitting as the second most played deck with a 51.5% win rate, but that is also on the decline. I think that these two decks, Suicune Baxcalibur and Altaria Greninja, are going to fall down in play. Dark Greninja and then and Magnezone Bellibolt are going to see more play. And as we see, Hydreigon's already dipped quite far. So that's the reality, I think, of the season right now. This is a deck list that, honestly, I'm also moving down to A tier, but I'm going to keep it above Suicune Baxcalibur. So both of those other S tier decks from last week in our sort of predictive early tier list have been demoted. But there are some other decks that I think will take the spot. Next up is going to be Altaria and Gourgiest. Now, Altaria Gourgiest is a very, very good deck, as we see here. The 7th most played deck so far this season. It is on the rise, 2.5% of the meta, but it has a 55% win rate. This is a very, very strong deck right now. And it's very well positioned. Again, like if the number one deck right now is going to be Magnezone and Oricorio, even with one Bellibolt thrown in, the Gourgeist goes a long way. I still think Mega Altaria is one of the best Pokemon in the entire game, but I think that the version of Altaria that you should be playing in the current metagame and into this ranked season right now should definitely not be the Greninja version. Maybe we'll have to see what the ranked meta looks like. I'm kind of curious about that. We'll talk about it more on Friday after I play a bunch of ranked games this week. But yeah, at the end of the day, guys, this is still a really strong deck list, and because of the top decks in the game right now kind of being Oricorio decks, then, you know, I think this Altaria is really, really strong. I'm actually going to move it up to S tier. I think this is the number one way you should be playing Altaria right now, and I think Altaria does deserve to be an S tier deck. So that's what we're going to put it. We're going to put it right here into the S tier. This is the new meta formulation. Like I said, things are really formulating around Magnezone and Oricorio, and then the Bellibolt. Like this deck list right here is kind of the new driver of the metagame. Let's talk about Turbo Bellibolt next, because I think that Turbo Bellibolt is still, you know, a decent deck. It is the 4th most played deck so far this season, has a 51% win rate. Nothing too phenomenal. I do kind of want to take a look at the matchups here. So it beats Suicune Baxcalibur, but that deck is seeing less play. It lost to Mega Altaria Greninja, but that deck is seeing less play as time goes on. But look at this, guys. It loses to Magnezone Bellibolt, and that's mainly because of the Oricorio and the pressure that Oricorio can put into the active spot. Everything else is in the metagame is kind of up and down. Again, struggling into Oricorio, really good into water type decks, but honestly not really great into Altaria, and hasn't been doing too great into Dark Greninja or Hydreigon, which are both of the Absol decks. So this is a deck that I think is still really good. I'll pull up an example here. One of the most recent examples, I guess, from March 7th is the only one. So this is a deck that, honestly, I just wouldn't really recommend right now. The way that the meta has kind of built itself up is a lot of Oricorio seeing play, a lot of Chingling decks. This is not a deck that loves Chingling, stops Pokeball, stops Electric Generator. And at the end of the day, guys, Bellibolt is still really strong, but I just think that we're in a very interesting meta right now where the metagame is kind of dominated by these Oricorio type decks. And even if we are playing Double Zero Aura and our own Oricorio, we just have the disadvantage because they play Magnezone, right? And Magnezone could come in and then when it KO your Zero Aura, and you're just put in a tough spot. The issue with this deck is that Bellibolt has a high retreat cost, so unless you're playing like Lyra or something here, once Bellibolt's in the active, you don't really want to pull it from the active spot because you're discarding 3 energies. So if any deck is playing an Oricorio, they're going to have a pretty big advantage into this deck. I kind of want to keep it A tier because I still think it's a very strong deck, but I'm going to actually put it just down a little bit. I'm going to put it, I'll keep it above Altaria Greninja and Suicune Baxcalibur, but I don't think it's going to be that high. It's going to be like a middle A tier deck, I think, by the end of this video. We'll see. Next up is just plain old Magnezone Oricorio, which is a tough thing to rank, quite frankly, because Magnezone Oricorio it has a very similar, deck, being the Magnezone Bellibolt deck. But if we scroll down, we do see Magnezone Oricorio without Bellibolt. It's the 15th most played deck this season, and that's very respectable, 52.5% win rate here. I'll pull up just an example so you guys can see. One from March 8th, I suppose. Here we go. So this is, again, just standard Magnezone Oricorio. There's nothing really to talk about here. I do think the deck benefits from the Bellibolt. Although, again, if you're playing Magnezone Oricorio into the metagame right now, you're probably going to be pretty decent. I just would rather you play the Bellibolt version. And again, That's really all this comes down to. It's tough to rank decks like this, quite frankly, because there's another deck so similar to it. But honestly, if you just didn't have Bellibolts or you didn't want to play it, I still think this is a very solid option. I'm actually going to keep it above these other 3 decks currently right now, just because Magnezone Oricorio beats Altaria Greninja, it beats Suicune Baxcalibur. The only thing this deck's going to really lose to is probably Altaria Gourgiest and then Hydreigon, and we'll talk about Hydreigon next. So I'm going to keep this right here, like a really high A tier. I just think Oricorio is very, very strong currently in the metagame. Next up, Hydreigon. Let's find a Hydreigon list to take a look at. So Hydreigon here is floating around the 5th most played deck so far this season. I think it's probably going to sit there, maybe reach 4th place, but it's not going to crack top 3 so far this season, or throughout the season, I don't think. I still think a lot of people are going to be playing Hydreigon in ranked battles, which is something that we really have to think about. So Hydreigon here, still a 51.5% win rate, a very respectable deck, just like I said it would be last week. I think Hydreigon is still very, very good. Again, not many people playing it in tournament, but I think in ranked battles, more people are going to play it. This is a very standard version of Hydreigon, so nothing's really changed too much about Hydreigon. What I'm going to do here is keep Hydreigon right here. I'm just going to keep it in the A tier, but I kind of want to move it up. In fact, I would rather you play this than Suicune Baxcalibur right now, especially for ranked, if we're talking ranked meta. Honestly, guys, I think I'm going to put it right in between Suicune Baxcalibur and Altaria Greninja, because this is sort of, there's 2 different sort of rock, paper, scissors formulations going on. Hydreigon hasn't really entered like the premier sort of trifecta at the top of the meta, but it still interacts in a rock, paper, scissors way between Suicune Baxcalibur, Altaria Greninja, and itself. So this is its own thing, and then the lightning decks I think are just sort of above those 3 decks. Next up are the Kangaskhan decks, and these are something that last week not many people were playing, but they actually performed somewhat well early in the season, and I had a pretty high sort of I guess estimation as to how good I thought Mega Kangaskhan would be. But to be fair, nobody's really ended up playing it this season, and they haven't really been substantial decks. So here's just like an example of Kangaskhan and Darkrai. 100th place here. Let's do this 4th place out of 105 recently at the Breakfast Club tournament. This is a weird deck playing Tornadus and Blow Through, which is crazy. So as you can see, like the most successful Kangaskhan decks have kind of been like niche, like off meta strategies. This Tornadus is kind of crazy. So 80 damage if there's a stadium, and we're playing stadium. So I think Mega Kangaskhan is totally fine. I just think there's other things in the meta that I would rather play. But the upside to Mega Kangaskhan, and the reason I thought it would be really relevant this season, is because with red, we can hit that 160 damage threshold and actually KO Bellibolts pretty consistently. So I still believe in Mega Kangaskhan. I just don't know if it really has like the best home right now, which is a little bit disappointing. The other version is just Greninja Oricorio, which I think most people are probably somewhat familiar with. That's going to be the Kangaskhan and Greninja deck. These, to me, I cannot keep them A tier. I kind of just, like, I went off faith and put these decks into the A tier last season, but honestly, these are 2 decks that we just cannot justify in the A tier. They're not premier decks. So I'm going to move them down here to the B tier, and then we'll sort the rest of these decks that were B tier last week and see if any of these guys deserve to kind of move up here. The first one we're going to do is Blaziken. Let's talk about Blaziken real quick. Where is it? Blaziken is all the way down at 20th place here, with a 38% win rate, which is really bad. But I don't know what version this is. We're going to talk about Blaziken in Heatmore, which is the version I would recommend, which is just below 50%. So it hasn't been doing too great, honestly. And I don't really think this is something, I honestly think Blaziken is a fine deck. I just don't know if it really does quite well into, well, I guess there's a lot of Chingling going around currently, isn't there? And a lot of Oricorio, so it might not be like the best thing to play currently. What is this, 40th place out of 127 is a recent placement. Not much has really changed with Blaziken, so there's nothing really to say about it. I guess it really hasn't really popped off as a super significant deck this season, so very respectable as far as just all of the decks go. We're going to keep this B tier. Probably not at the top of B tier. Let's just move it above Kangaskhan for now. We'll sort these as we go through them. Next up is going to be Gardevoir, Mega Gardevoir, and Meloetta. Let's see how Gardevoir is doing, because again, it did have that one placement at our tournament, which kind of warranted why I put it in the B tier, or high up in the B tier. But okay, so Gardevoir and Meloetta here, the 22nd most played deck with a 46% win rate. So it has been kind of struggling somewhat recently, which is a little bit disappointing. But again, lots of Oricorio going around. This just really isn't a deck that I think does extremely well into a metagame where a lot of these Pokemon can kind of 2-hit KO you anyway, which is kind of crazy. Let's take a look here at this deck that got 4th place. Pretty standard. I think most people just play the old Gardevoir, Diantha, Meloetta package. I like the developers intended us to. The Xerneas here for the Oricorio stuff, but at the end of the day, this just really isn't like a top tier deck in the meta, and I think B tier is probably fine. Maybe we could kind of split hairs and put this into like the C tier, but I'm going to really reserve the C tier for decks decks I just kind of would not recommend at all. So let's put this right here. I'm actually going to put it, well, I'll put it like right below Blaziken. How about that? Put it right in the B tier. Next up is Altaria Chingling, and Altaria Chingling is an interesting deck, mainly because it functions very similar to Gourgeist in the way that people are playing it right now. Let's pull up an example here, just so you guys can see. So Altaria Chingling, the 8th most played deck, it actually only has a 48% win rate, but again, this is a very generalized deck list, and I want people to understand that. So this win rate here isn't something I would really talk too much about, or I guess value too much. But let's sort here. Recently 7th place at 151 player tournament. And as we see, this deck is playing Jirachi, and it's playing Furfrou, and it's playing Klefki, so it's kind of like a toolkit version of Altaria. I do think that with the heavy Oricorio meta, it is probably just better for you to play Gourgeist, quite frankly. Into Dark Greninja, you're going to struggle and lose the Chingling battle no matter what. And again, to like Magnezone Oricorio, you're probably still going to struggle. So if you're going to play Altaria, I would kind of still recommend, quite frankly, that you play the, you know, the Gourgeist version, but you know, it's not a bad deck. Where do we have it top of B tier? I think, honestly, I'm going to keep this like high up on B tier, because I think this is probably still a very, very good choice. So we won't move this. We'll keep Altaria Chingling right here. Next up is Houndstone, though. This is something I'm actually really excited to talk about. I put Houndstone in the B tier last season, or last week. I thought it was going to be just a really solid deck. You know, nothing too crazy, but honestly, it's actually exceeded expectations, which has been really cool. So this Houndstone Gourgeist deck here, 16th place, or 16th most played deck this season, has a 50.5% win rate, so nothing incredible from a win rate perspective, but let's take a look at the matchups here, because some of these are definitely very relevant. Struggling just a little bit into Altaria Greninja, but that's not that big of a deal. Winning matchup into Magnezone and Bellibolt, so that's significant. Winning matchup into Bellibolt Zero Aura, which is significant. It's bad matchups into Suicune and Baxcalibur and Hydreigon really aren't that relevant for me, and it is struggling pretty heavily into Altaria and Gourgeist. So honestly, and look at all these other matchups. It's doing really well into like Dark Greninja, or 50-50 into Dark Greninja, does good into Charizard, into Meowth, into Mega Lopunny Annihilate. But I really like this deck, and it's honestly kind of counter meta to Oricorio, which I think is kind of cool here. Let me pull up an example, a recent example for you guys. So let's do first place out of 60. Sure, look at this, a first place Houndstone deck. Very similar. I think it's basically the same deck as we talked about last week. A deck I really like, a deck that honestly I would kind of recommend right now. And I think that its performances over this past week kind of justify for me to move this deck out of the B tier. I think this is officially what we're considering to be like a meta viable deck in the season. If Houndstone wins a tournament, we're not going to be that surprised. So A tier is where this is going to go, but where do we want? I think it's definitely above Suicune, and I honestly kind of want to put it right here with, I'm actually going to move Bellibolt Zero Aura down below. Actually, am I though? I'm going to move Hydreigon above Altaria Greninja, and I'm going to move Houndstone above Altaria Greninja, actually, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, are we? Let's not go too crazy here. Let's put it, yeah, you know what, I will. No, what do I want to do? I'm going to put it right here. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to put it right there. This deck is actually just really good. It's really exciting that a deck like this could be relevant. The only real single prize archetypes we've had for so long have been Hydreigon, as we know we don't really love that, and then Magnezone. So for something else to really enter into that sort of atmosphere is really, really cool. So Houndstone, going to go into the A tier, and I'm really happy about that. And honestly, guys, like this is kind of where I'm chilling right now with the A tier. I think all of these decks are pretty good. Maybe some of these other B tier decks move up. Let's talk about Chandelure and Meowth, which is a deck that I just don't know how many people are playing it right now. Let's find it here in the metagame tab. Okay, all the way down to the 32nd place with a 46% win rate. This is just not really a deck that most people are playing currently. I did get 29th place today or yesterday at a 127 player tournament. You know, it's not a terrible deck, but I do think that a lot of people are kind of moving off of this archetype and playing the Houndstone deck, which again is kind of similar if you think about it. I just think Houndstone is really better than Chandelure into most things in the current metagame. So while we do remember this deck and it was a fun deck over the last season, I think right now this is sort of the Houndstone's time in the spotlight. So shout out to Chandelure, which I don't mind. The Meowth stuff was always really inconsistent, but also annoying. So we're going to kind of probably move this out of the B tier, and I'm probably thinking like a little C tier placement. Again, we have Houndstone in the A tier, so I know all of you Chandelure Meowth enjoyers are going to be a little upset, but it's okay. You know, it's all good. We're going to put it right here into the C tier. Okay, Magnezone and Helioisk, or Magro as we like to call it. We had a B tier last week, and I think that's because it got went to finals, I think, of our tournament, which I definitely think was a bit of a flash in the pan type moment here. It's the 35th most played deck, has a 48% win rate, 63 and 63, so really 50-50. Let's take a look at the matchups here. Anything significant? It does do well into Altaria Greninja, but loses to Magnezone Bellibolt and Hydreigon, which are kind of scary. Also losing to Dark Greninja. So this is not something that I really feel super strongly about. If we go to best finishes, let's see. So we had 8th in a 120 player tournament yesterday, which is pretty cool. Again, not a terrible deck. I honestly, the more I kind of think about this deck list, the more I think that, you know, we have a lot of Magnezone in the meta right now, and there's probably better options. If you're not playing Oricorio with Magnezone, I think you're at a disadvantage. And honestly, the #1 deck currently in the meta right now is also a Magnezone deck. It just plays Bellibolt and Oricorio, as we see. So I think Magro can kind of stay in the B tier. I'm going to move it down a little bit. I'm going to put it like above Blaziken. But definitely we're going to keep that B tier for now. I think it's just a very middle of the road deck. And next up is going to be Mega Charizard. Let's see what Mega Charizard's up to, huh? Let's see. I'm sorry I can't put like the decks on screen like I usually do with editing. I just don't have time today. Where's Charizard? Charizard's still seeing a bunch of player magic. Okay, so it's the 12th most played deck with a 46% win rate, which is very standard for Mega Charizard and Entei. But if we go to the best finishes, I'm really curious. It hasn't won anything recently, so, you know, I'm a little bit shy to rank this too highly here. Let's take a look at this list. They got 42nd place at a tournament recently. Yeah, nothing's really changed, I don't think. We are playing one PCL on top of Winlily. Yeah, you know, I think Mega Charizard is, again, totally fine. Unfortunately for Mega Charizard, and yeah, I know you can play cards in the deck to kind of help you in the Oricorio matchup. The downside to Charizard is that the meta right now isn't dominated by 3 prize Pokemon. The only other Mega Pokemon that is like particularly relevant in the metagame right now is Altaria, and Charizard likes the Altaria matchup because it can want to KO Altaria, but everything else is going to struggle. It's going to struggle with Magnezone. It's definitely going to struggle with Magnezone Oricorio. It's going to struggle into Hydreigon. It's probably going to struggle into Houndstone, honestly, as well. So again, I just don't really think Charizard is like anything special to talk about right now, just like it was last week, which I think is probably a fine place for this. Let's put it right here below Magro. I'm actually going to put it below Blaziken as well. It's just a B tier. Like the B tier are just about decks like that, unfortunately for Charizard. But next up is Leafeon. So let's see what Leafeon's up to. I do love Leafeon. How many people are playing it? It's the 21st most played deck, but look at this win rate, 51%. So very respectable, 158 to 148. I don't know how many people are playing this recently, but it actually got 4th place today at a tournament, which is cool. So 4th out of 179, which is interesting. Not too many placements in recent history, so I think a lot of the performances of this deck is probably early in the season, so we got to keep that in mind here. But let's take a look at a deck list. Pretty standard, not much really changing here from the, you know, the previous seasons in the way that people were playing this deck, so nothing crazy in terms of a development perspective, but I think this is honestly just a complete legitimate deck list, and yet another deck that there's nothing super special to say about it. It kind of arose as like a counter Hydreigon deck in a metagame where Altaria Greninja was sort of the premier counter to Hydreigon, so, you know, this is a very legitimate deck. It's just not something I would really consider like extremely like good, you know? I'm gonna put it high B tier though. I'm gonna put it like, you know, I might even put this like at the top of B tier right now. I'll keep it below Altaria Chingling. But this is definitely really, really high B tier, just a really solid deck, but definitely not A tier territory like I think a lot of these other decks are. Honestly, like certain things are on the decline, so things like Greninja Altaria and Suicune Baxcalibur could possibly find their way into the B tier, like if we were to do another tier list next week. But we're talking right now, and these are still very strong decks. Okay, last deck to rank of the B tier is going to be Absol and Greninja. So Dark Greninja, which this to me is the biggest story so far this season, is the rise back up of Dark Greninja. Already the 6th most played deck across this entire season with a 54.5% win rate. Very, very high. The highest win rate out of any of these decks aside from Mega Altaria and Gourgiest, which is really, really phenomenal. So what I want to do is take a look real quick at these matchups and show you guys. Really good matchup, 60% into Altaria Greninja, 51% into Magnezone Bellibolt, so it's actually about a 50-50. It's not that good. It loses to Suicune Baxcalibur, but like I said, not many people are playing it. It beats Hydreigon, which is relevant, it struggles into some of these other non-Greninja Altaria decks, which is, again, kind of a big deal, but this is a really, really solid deck into so many different things as we see this season. Basically, this is just actually a deck that's very well positioned, and if we go to best finishes as well, we'll see that it got 2nd place at a tournament today, 2nd second place at a tournament yesterday, got first place at a tournament yesterday, second and second. Like, it's been performing extremely well as of recent. These are all very, very recent dates. And as we saw, I did get second place at the 1,500 player tournament, as well as 5th, 7th, and 8th place. This deck has been absolutely incredible just recently, and I think this is something that I would really, really recommend going into this ranked season. You're going to play a lot of Hydreigon, probably a lot of Altaria Greninja, probably a decent amount of Bellibolt as well. This is something that I think would be a phenomenal choice for this ranked season, and it's a phenomenal choice for the current tournament metagame as well. So this is a deck that's, again, the biggest story here going into the second week, and it's going to jump from from B tier all the way up into S tier. This is going to be our new sort of S tier trifecta. As we see here, Magnezone Bellibolt is really the only that S tier deck that kind of persisted from last week. But the rock paper scissors formulation is kind of still here, which is definitely relevant. The meta right now is definitely about being able to handle this Magnezone Bellibolt deck, which is definitely still sort of the most played deck right now, and probably will continue to be. And I think this deck deserves an S tier placement, so that's where it's going to go. And let's go down here to what do we got? We got Suicune and Greninja. I do just want to check on this really quickly because this is a pretty funny deck. I'm really kind of just curious to see what's going on with Suicune and Greninja. It's fallen all the way to the 10th most played deck. Look at this, a 43% win rate, less than 43%. That is abysmal, very, very low. In fact, we might even put this to D tier, but we can't. We're going to just keep it C tier because this is just not something I would really recommend. We also have Lopunny, and that's crazy. We have Lopunny and Lucario, which I'm actually going to take off the tier list because we have a new Lopunny deck, which is going to be Lopunny and Annihilate. So that's what I want to talk about. Jumping up to the 11th most played deck so far this season, but not a great win rate, unfortunately. This is just not a deck that's really much better than the old Lopunny was coming into this season, which is kind of unfortunate. I'll pull up a deck list so you guys can see. But what's interesting here is it's got a couple of recent placements, nothing incredible. But this is going to be the deck list here. We are playing the new Annihilate. We're playing the coin flip. It's a coin flip deck, which is why I don't think this deck is very strong. But it probably does somewhat decent if we can take a look here into Magnezone Bellibolt. That's kind of what I'm curious about. Magnezone Bellibolt, yeah. So it's a counter to Magnezone Bellibolt, but loses to effectively everything else, which is kind of sad. But that good matchup kind of still warrants this to me to be a C tier placement. I'm going to put it right here at the top of C tier. Even though that win rate is abysmal, you do beat the most played deck so far this season, so that's that. Let's just quickly check in on Gholdengo and Meowscarada, and then we'll rank Ninetales and we'll finish up. So Gholdengo and Meowscarada, I'm not going to show the deck lists because I don't really think many people are playing them. Meowscarada's fallen all the way to the 9th most played deck with a 41% win rate. Again, the lowest out of any of these decks, so we're going to keep that in the D tier. And then where is Gholdengo? I guess Gholdengo and Dialga is at 37, which is abysmal, and then Gholdengo and Orthworm is 38. So these are effectively still the worst decks as we kind of saw them to be early in the season. Gholdengo, man, I know a lot of people loved it. It just is not a competitively viable deck list to any stretch. So Gholdengo and Meowscarada are going to stick down here into the D tier, really where they belong, quite frankly, which feels bad to me. But you know what? Shout out to Gholdengo. It's just not what it needs to be. Neither is really Meowscarada, which was specifically only good into Hydreigon, which not many people are playing. Finally, though, let's rank Ninetales and Baxcalibur because this is also a new deck list here. So Ninetales and Baxcalibur has jumped up to already the 14th most played deck this season. It's got a 48% win rate, 48.5%, which isn't very great, 267 to 274. Let's take a look at the matchup spread, see if anything really jumps out at us. It's actually beating Suicune and Baxcalibur, which is crazy, and it beats Hydreigon, which does also make a little bit of sense, and then kind of loses pretty hard to like most other relevant things. Not hard, actually, just not great, but it can somewhat contend. It really does lose to Altaria, though, which quite frankly feels quite bad. Yeah, definitely hard loses to Altaria. Definitely hard beats, though, a bunch of random decks, including Houndstone, which also kind of makes sense, which is interesting. What's cool, though, about Ninetales, let's take a look here at the placement. So we have 27th place in today's tournament, or a tournament today. Though what's cool about Ninetales Baxcalibur with Jianpao is that it's slower than Suicune and Baxcalibur, but this deck is entirely not weak to lightning, which is kind of cool. I kind of like that. Yeah, I mean, this is a totally fine deck. Nothing too phenomenal. A couple winning matchups in there. I think this is probably going to settle down just right into the B tier. I'll put it like, I don't even know. I'll put it like right here, B tier. I still think you should probably I don't even know. It's probably better than Suicune Baxcalibur. Suicune Baxcalibur probably does not deserve to be in the A tier, I'm going to be honest. So I'm just going to put it B tier. I'm actually going to move it down and just put it right next to Ninetales because why not? I don't think either of these decks are really A tier material, I'll be honest with you. In fact, Altaria should probably be A tier above them. I might actually change that. I might just put this like right here. And yeah, okay. And there we go. Okay, so this is going to be our updated tier list. We did it all in about 30 minutes. I apologize. This isn't typically how we do the tier lists, but I didn't have time to edit them today, so I apologize. But there you go, guys. Comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. This is sort of a tier list for this upcoming week of the metagame, but honestly, I just wanted to kind of come back and highlight the changes that I would make to the tier list last week for anybody that was wondering what's changed. A lot has changed, and this is sort of the new outlook of the metagame in my mind. But yeah, definitely kind of treading towards the top currently right now. The decks in A tier, definitely not bad, but I think there's a clear separation between A tier and S tier. And honestly, the difference between A tier right now and B tier is pretty slim, I'm not gonna lie. Anything C tier and below, I just would not play. But quite frankly, A and B tier are very similar. These are just decks that are seeing more play, so I kind of feel better about putting them into the A tier. But yeah, A and B tier, very similar. A bunch of pretty decent decks right now, but these are the 3 big decks that I would consider you to play. Very, very good right now. Dark Greninja is a massive story. This is the #1 Altaria deck that I would choose to play right now in a very heavily dominated Magnezone Oricorio metagame. And yeah, Bellibolt, Magbolt, I don't know, whatever you call this, is definitely the top dog right now and just has been dominating. It does everything. It's really hard to counterplay this deck, quite honestly, unless you're playing some things that just really aren't that good in general, like Mega Lopunny and whatnot. And yeah, there's the tier list, guys. All right, let's get out of here. Peace out. Have a good one. We'll talk to you guys later. Again, go register for PMPT number 23. Link to register is going to be down in the description below. I will be gone this weekend, but the tournament will still be happening, and I'm very, very excited about that. So we'll see what happens at the tournament. But anyway, guys, let's get out of here. Peace out. Have a good one. We'll see you guys later. And yeah. Bye.